us today for the second public meeting of the Patapsco Regional Greenway, Sykesville to McKeldin area of the Patapsco Valley State Park project. My name is Keith Kacharik, and I'm a transportation planner at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and I'm the project manager for this segment of the trail. With me tonight from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council are Ms. Regina Aris, Ms. Charlene Mingus, Ms. Monica Haynes-Bencata, and our design consultant team from RK&K, Ms. Melissa Miklas, Mr. Colin Hodges, and Mr. Eric Crawford, and they'll be giving the bulk of the presentation later on tonight. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize Sykesville Mayor Stacy Link and the Board of Carroll County Commissioners for their support. Before we get started with tonight's presentation, just a few housekeeping items. Just to let everybody know, this meeting is being recorded so we can capture all the questions and comments. Also, I think everybody should be automatically muted, but if not, please mute your devices, and so that'll help to avoid any background noises. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to just type those questions into the chat box. We'll either answer them as we go along, or most likely we'll answer them at the conclusion of the presentation. So as many as you know, and for those who don't, the Patapsco Regional Greenway is envisioned as a 40-mile shared use trail traveling through the Patapsco Valley State Park from Sykesville in Carroll County to the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. The trail, when it's completed, will pass through or near a number of communities with Sykesville being the farthest west. The Patapsco Regional Greenway will provide communities with a sustainable transportation route and miles of recreation trails. In our first public meeting back in May, we outlined the steps we will be taking to bring this project to 30% design completion. The Sykesville to McKeldin section is divided into two unique sections. The western section, which runs from downtown Main Street in Sykesville to Freedom Park, and then the eastern section that runs from Freedom Park to the McKeldin area of the Patapsco Valley State Park near Marysville Road. At the May meeting, we presented two alignment options for each of these segments. Melissa and the RK&K team will give you a brief reminder of what those alignments looked like. So since that May meeting, we've made a lot of progress. Tonight, we'll be taking a look at the alignment alternatives we had under consideration and the results of the public outreach efforts, which led us to choose the alignments we'll be moving forward with. We'll also discuss some of the design elements we are considering and some of the elements that we looked at as we progressed with our design, but some of those elements that won't be moving forward, and we'll kind of give you a little explanation why they didn't work. This trail will also include some standard, or this presentation will include some of the design standards for trails that that will dictate the construction of the natural surface trail. And finally, we'll discuss the next steps as we begin to wind down the project. Again, we're only funded for 30% design at this point. So we are on schedule to complete the 30% design plans by the end of this year. And then after that, it'll be contingent upon finding funding from other sources. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Melissa and Eric and Colin, and they'll walk us through the presentation. Again, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to type them in the chat box, and we'll be happy to try to answer any of those questions after the presentation. So Melissa, all yours.
All right. Thank you, Keith. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. As Keith said, we're just going to go through a brief project recap to show you how this all was envisioned and born. Then we'll take a look at the alternatives that we have presented previously at the public meeting. We've also been working with a steering committee and a public advisory group. So we're going to share all of that information that we've been getting from you, the general public, through our story map, through publicinput.com, show you where that has driven us in this project. Then we have just a few questions for you all, just a fun little Slido activity where you can pull out your phone and scan a QR code or go to a website. And that's kind of live and interactive, and you'll see the results on the screen as we're giving our presentation. And then we'll just wrap it up with next steps so that you all can get on to your families and dinner and whatever else you have planned for this fall evening. All right, so let's go. So Colin, we have a few, and when I say a few, it's quite a few ways for you all to get involved tonight. So we're going to be monitoring the chat on publicinput.com as we go through this presentation. And you're also welcome to comment on the actual project page. So if you're just listening and not watching, I'm going to read this out to you. So to access that site, it is publicinput.com/PRGSYKESVILLE. So it's publicinput.com/PRG Sykesville. And then similarly, you can email us either tonight or another day or for a couple weeks, your thoughts. And that one is PRGSYKESVILLE@publicinput.com. And yet another way, you could also text us. So you can text PRG Sykesville to 855-925-2801. Again, that texting number is 855-925-2801. And then one more way, because that's just not enough, you can also give us a call and leave us a voicemail with your thoughts. And that phone number to leave a voicemail is 855-925-2801, and the extension is 3163. Again, that extension is 3163. All right, so that's a lot of ways to get in touch with us tonight. A few of those ways will continue to be open after our presentation, so you can continue to give us those comments, and I will repeat those and spell those out for you at the end of our presentation. All right, so let's take a look. How was this project born? So Keith gave a pretty great summary, but I just wanted to share a map with you all tonight. So this is that entire alignment of the Patapsco Regional Greenway. And this isn't something that we made up as part of this project. This is already an approved document out there with this squiggly line in it. And it takes us from Sykesville down to Baltimore in the Inner Harbor. So our job as part of this project that we were working on was to look at this, what seems like an itty bitty piece, but it's not quite itty bitty. So this piece right here is more of what we're kind of calling this urban component of the trail, which is from downtown Sykesville into Freedom Park. And then we're looking at a really awesome alignment within the park that Eric is going to talk a lot about tonight. We're super excited to share with you all. So let's keep on going in our recap here. So this map is zoomed in a little bit further into our study area. So you can see this purple dashed squiggly line going through here, and that was one of the alignments from the original plan that was given to us when we started. And so that means, hey, here's an idea. We want a trail. It's going to connect from here to here. So how do we get from Main Street in Sykesville through the park and then into the McKeldin area? So how do we do that? So that's what we dove into when we started this project. So throughout our process, if you've joined us before, you've seen this diagram before. So we've had a couple different instances of public input. You're in meeting number 2. We really dove into some existing conditions, looking at historic features, looking at topography, looking at traffic and vehicular movement. And then we came up with some alternatives, which we'll go through tonight. We had our first public meeting, got some feedback from you all. And then we came up with these preferred alternatives. So we needed to do a little bit of further exploration with those. So we get into surveying, which is going out in the field and figuring out, hey, exactly where is that existing sidewalk? Hey, exactly where is that roadway? Where is that entrance to my neighborhood? Then we look at some geotechnical investigation, which is basically what is under the ground. Can I build a trail on this? If we need to do some stormwater management, is that going to work? And then we look at utilities because we don't want to hit those while we're building trails. So there's a lot of above ground and underground things that we're exploring and getting into so that we can develop what we call 30% design. And so what that means is we're kind of, if you get from 0 to 100, we're 30% there. So there's still lots of opportunity to make tweaks and changes and discover more things through the design process. But we're going to stop at 30 for this project. So we're looking forward to your comments on that. All right, so let's jump into those alts that we have been talking about throughout this process, and you all have probably seen this before. So the way we started is we were taking a look at a couple different alignments, and one of those was starting at Main Street. Let's take a look at that orange line first, and traveling up Sandusky Road, crossing 32, and then taking Rain Cliff over to Freedom Park and crossing into Freedom Park. The other alignment that we looked at would be traveling south on Main Street, kind of crossing underneath of 32 and then using an old bridge abutment, continuing along the right of way of 32, and then again jumping onto Rain Cliff to get to Freedom Park. So if we zoom in a little bit, we start to understand what the opportunities and constraints are and what we're considering along the way. So a few things with the Sandusky alignment, super steep hill there, a little bit difficult to bike up, even for the most confident bicyclists. I don't know, it was hard for me. We do have to cross 32, so we want to be really mindful of creating a safe intersection. So we know that's something we need to be responsible for. And then we want to make sure that we can safely cross into Freedom Park from whichever side of Rain Cliff that we are on. So as we take another look at the next component here, when we're looking at what we called the 32 alignment, because it went along 32, we took a group of folks out and walked this. And a couple of the things we noticed was it was pretty noisy along 32 and we could barely hold a conversation. So it really started to make us think about this alignment. And we really liked going south along Main Street, but there were just a couple of things that we were thinking that maybe we needed to really explore if this was going to be our potential opportunity for the trail. So as we look a little bit further into that, we decided, hey, let's evaluate this. Let's try to kind of come up with some trade-offs and understand what we're looking at here. So you may have seen this in our story map, but we decided to take a look at those two alternatives and think about how many crossings do we have? Do we feel safe? How can we improve those? Is this sustainable? How are we going to build this? How does this live into the future? What does it look like? What are the scenery and views? Is this a really pleasant experience for us? What's our perception of safety? How do I feel? Do I feel comfortable? Is it loud? Do I feel like I'm really close to cars or do I feel a little bit of separation? What is the noise like? So that 32 alignment, I keep saying it, but it was, a big impact when we went out on our site visit. And then steep slopes along Sandusky, how do we make that more comfortable for our 8 to 80 age groups? And then we did take a look at private and special use property. Did we need to go onto private property? What did that mean? What were we adjacent to? Is this trail going to be a complementary land use or a complementary use to the land use that is along our alignment? So this is how that started to shake out. And again, that's been on our story map for a while. So then just to, quickly review through the Patapsco alignment, and Eric is going to dive into this more later, is we kind of ended up with a bit of a northern alignment and a southern alignment. And so when we're looking at trails, we're really trying to make this a pleasant experience. We're trying to not make it too steep. If it is steep, we want it to be like a short, fun adventure, but then really kind of continue on a nice trail experience. Again, we're looking to serve, a wide age group, a group of folks who have a range of abilities. So we want to make sure this is pleasant for everybody. So as we zoom into this, we also have this opportunity with this old road bridge abutment, the Henryton Road Bridge, to put in a new pedestrian and bicycle bridge. So we wanted to think about how we connect to that. What does that experience look like? How do we get to our trail from this great bridge opportunity? And so as we explored a little bit further, it looked like we had kind of, like I said before, this northern and southern section. So what you see highlighted in yellow, as the crow flies, this is about 4 miles, but really this trail alignment would end up being about 7.5. So that's a pretty good hike. And, you know, you have to start thinking about how you would travel along this. Would you try to create a loop out of it and use the roadway? Would you want to go out and back? Do you park 2 cars? What is that experience like? And so the southern alignment that we have here is about 7.3 miles, so pretty similar. And as Eric gets into his part of the discussion tonight, he's going to get into some of the specifics about why and why not we chose our northern section or our southern section, and really how you, the public, and a lot of our stakeholders influence that decision. So again, we're looking at some trade-offs here. So really looking at that same criteria to try to make these decisions. We know there's a lot going on in the park. We know that there are bow hunters. We know there's a lot of equestrian use. And so we really want to be cognizant of all of those elements and all of those considerations. Like I said, we're definitely looking to keep this manageable for a wide variety of ages and abilities. And so we just feel like that's our responsibility to make this really pleasant and enjoyable for a variety of users. All right. So now let's get into hearing a little bit about what you all have said, what our steering committee and stakeholder committees have said, and really how we have selected these alignments that are going to go into 30% design. All right, Colin, it's yours.
Thanks, Melissa. So looking at public outreach results, as Melissa and Keith both mentioned, we went out to the public in a variety of different ways, and that's one of the major things that we've done since the last time we met. And the comment period officially was open from May 6th through June 11th for this phase. And primarily, the survey was achieved the most responses. We had almost 300 responses in total. The comment map, which was part of the story map linked to through the website, got 15 responses, a little less, but still very helpful, some of the insights. The website and the website and the emails that the MC received from the public at different stages, they received quite a few at 36 and 25 respectively. And the last public meeting, there were 13 attendees, which yielded some really good insights there as well. And then continuously at different intervals, we've been meeting with an advisory committee and a steering committee. The advisory committee is made up of members of the public representing certain interest groups. And then the steering committee was made up of design, planning, public officials, people who are more professionals in the field. So what we heard, and we're going to divide up this section like we did the last, looking at the Sykesville section and then the Patapsco Valley State Park section. And through this process, we found that the majority of survey respondents favored the Sandusky Road alignment when asked to choose between the two. And that was alternative number 1, as Melissa outlined. And about 41% of respondents said separation from traffic was something they value most in a connection. And that was most frequently chosen. There were other elements that people find valuable in a trail, but I will show those in a second. And a pretty significant proportion, about 75%, said they would be more likely to walk or bike instead of drive to access the new trail if an improved connection between Sykesville and Freedom Park was provided. So currently people are saying that they drive to get to different parts of Patapsco Valley State Park, but with this new connection, they might be, what it looks like most of them would be more likely to walk or bike instead of driving to trailheads. And then an even larger proportion, about 80% of respondents favor replacing the existing sidewalk with a wider multi-use pathway. And that just means on the Sandusky Road, on Wrinkliff Road, instead of utilizing part of the existing sidewalk, the consensus has been that we need to widen that to provide a multi-use trail experience. And then looking at the actual results, question by question for this section, there is, again, separation from traffic came up at 41%, scenic route and direct route trailed, and then accessibility and trail free of noise pollution trailed behind those. And then again, this is 75%, pretty pretty large percentage said they'd be more likely to walk and bike instead of drive to the trails in Patapsco Valley State Park if this connection was provided. And this question related to either retaining some of the existing sidewalk facilities or expanding to a multi-use path. And the overwhelming majority chose the expansion. And the actual percentage here of the Sandusky Road versus the MD32 alignment alternatives, the Sandusky Road, as you can see, was pretty significant in being almost 70% of respondents preferred that alignment. So ultimately, examining the trade-offs and looking at existing conditions and importantly, hearing from the public the last couple months, we have opted for the preferred alternative being Sandusky Road. And so that would be going again, as Melissa mentioned, from Main Street up Sandusky Road to Raincliffe Road, and then connecting to the rest of Patapsco Valley State Park through Freedom Park. And one of the things that is, as Melissa mentioned, that's a bit of a challenge on the Sandusky Road section is the very steep grade from Main Street directly after Main Street going up towards Patapsco Valley State Park. It's very steep and challenging for many on bikes to navigate, and that would be a key component of the trail. So in trying to mitigate that challenge, one of the things we're looking at is trying to construct a boardwalk that reduces the grade and makes it easier for people to get up that hill. So, and again, as Melissa mentioned, the intent is to make this trail accessible and usable for all ages, whether young or old or somewhere in between. And a lower grade or Americans with Disabilities Act compliant boardwalk would significantly reduce the barrier to entry. And these are just a couple of conceptual renderings of how that boardwalk could look. We haven't fully nailed down the design, and as Melissa mentioned, this is going to be at only 30% design. So this is a visualization to show what we could provide here to make that connection easier. And then digging into the boardwalk a little further, because it would be a major part of this alternative. There's several options for materials that not very evident from the rendering, but anything from treated timber or something synthetic. And then some example of some of the considerations that we look at when we design anything like public boardwalk. You know, timber can be slippery and there are steep grades. We would want to avoid that. The top railing, we want to avoid splinters and sort of make it out of material that promotes people being able to use it without kind of getting splinters. And then wire mesh between railings to prevent falls. So something to prevent users from having the danger of falling between any rails, just having something tight. And then I'm going to wrap up this section with a few examples of those materials. So here's an example of a pressure treated timber boardwalk. And then the next few are going to be synthetic. So Duragrid, Permatrack, and then a composite example here, Lumber Rock, TimberTech. And just some examples of materials that we could look at building the boardwalk with. And now I'm going to hand it over to Eric, who's going to give us a tour of the public, what we heard in the public, what we heard from public outreach in the Patapsco Valley State Park section. Eric.
Thanks, Colin. So the responses from the surveys and the input from the comment period clearly reached out to the South Branch alternative number 2. The issues cited primarily were conflicts with equestrian uses. You've got the League of Maryland Horsemen property up there. There was a lot of concern about that. Topographical challenges, road crossings, vehicular conflicts, that sort of thing. 59% of the respondents, as you can see here, thought that the Henderson Road Bridge for bike ped crossing was a good idea. So, you know, those are the types of responses that we heard, and you can see in the graphs for the questions here, you know, what those questions were, how they were posted, and some of the percentages and counts that came through. The alternative for the Patapsco Regional Greenway, as you can see in this next slide, was overwhelming for the South Branch. Colin, if you can move forward. 110 versus 15 in total for the South Branch. So that was pretty crystal clear from the public comment side. The next slide shows our comment map results with the trailhead access notes on there, topographical challenges, conflicts with equestrian uses, as we've said already. The map was really helpful in kind of like pinpointing where those spots were, where people thought there were going to be conflicts. So we were very happy with the results there. To show you the alternative here, highlighted in yellow, kind of runs from Freedom Park down to Marriottsville Road. Should be a pleasant experience, but at the same time, there are some challenges in here. There's some steep slopes. We do have a lot of different user types that we're trying to design for, and so we go into the Park Service to try and find out, what those, if there are design standards, what they are, those sorts of things for the different types of use that we're going to be out here. So, on the next slide, we're showing the Maryland Park Service's natural surface trail specifications matrix. And this can give you an idea of what we're talking about. It's the primary experience that you're going to see out there is this more difficult blue level where the constructed tread would be a little wider than what this is specifying, but the grades would be a little greater than what this is specifying. So we're kind of in the blue to black range, depending on how you look at it. Turning radiuses would obviously be wider. Trail corridor will be wider, those sorts of things. Just because we do have a lot of equestrian use out here, we want to make sure that there's plenty of room for everybody to get by each other as they meet on the trail. On the equestrian design side, we look to the Forestry Service to try and come up with some answers there. And again, because of the terrain and the area, we'll be, kind of looking. You'll have the experience you'll have will be more of a low development type situation where the tread width is, in our opinion, is going to be 3 to 4 feet wide, and the corridor clearing will be closer to 8 feet, and then the height, obviously, to accommodate for those equestrian uses would be 10 and above, just to kind of make sure that there's, again, enough room to avoid user conflict. To give you an idea what that's going to look like, you can see here, this is a 3 to 4 foot wide trail. Gives you an idea of the actual physical set presence of a horse and a runner, and what the corridor would look like above them. It's the trail corridor is not just the trail itself; it's also the clear zone around the trail as well, giving the users the ability to kind of maneuver around each other so that they're able to safely pass each other. Along with this user conflict question, trail designers are always looking for ways to make sure that they're following the contour, primarily for that runoff option, but as well as a way to create areas where you no longer have that conflict. So in rolling contour trail, you'll have these little peaks and ebbs and flows within the trail itself that kind of provide for good sight lines, so that there's no surprises. And there's no like super steep, straight shot down the hill type stuff, so that, speeds get kind of out of control and those sorts of things. And so there's trail design elements that are used to kind of prevent those user conflicts. Now in this area, again, there are a lot of steep slopes. And so some of these maps that you're about to see here are a slope analysis that we did to try and identify where the problem spots might be. There are a lot of red dots on here indicating a slope that is going to be, 20% or greater in various places, 25% or greater in various places. And so we want to try and identify those and see if there's anything we can do about those. And as the trail is laid out here today, this was just us walking the line and kind of saying, okay, we need to go here, we need to go there, we need to cross the stream here, we need to cross the stream there, those sorts of things. And some of these anomalies are picked up because the points that we were dropping along the way, we kind of moved up and down the hill from various times just to try and see, okay, there's a big rock over there we'd like to hit, there's a nice looking, there's a nice overlook here that we'd like to see. So in that, you will, in the final design, you will see a lot of these steep sections kind of go away because the final design and the trail builders themselves will kind of elongate those slopes a little bit so that you don't have those problems. Here in the center of the screen, there's a collection of red dots towards the bottom of the screen there that indicate a lot of steep slope down in that area. And that's a little bit of a misnomer. That whole area there, that square, is a giant Russian olive invasive forest. It's impossible to get through. So we actually had to approach it basically on our hands and knees from one direction until we couldn't go any further. Then we went all the way around and came back to it from the other side. So that's why those dots there look a little bit steep. That thing will all smooth out the whole way through. As we travel down the trail, you can see it kind of begins to smooth out. And again, this is a representation of, you know, how easy the terrain was to get through. The stuff to the left of your screen, again, there, some of it will be mitigated simply by elongating those slopes. Where we're crossing streams, those are going to be taken care of by bridges primarily. The state park system has bridge designs for 20-foot bridges or less. There are also some modifications that can be made, some accommodations that can be made for longer stretches, but you know, those are on a case-by-case basis. The primary thing here that I want you to understand is that while the slope analysis does show some steep slopes that we're concerned with, most of them will be elongated out. All that said, in this last section, there are some that won't be mitigated out. On the left-hand side of the screen there, we go over the tunnel there, the Henrington Tunnel, twice. That second one, there's a red dot there that will not go away. The terrain is such that there's just no way to get through there without taking a steep jaunt up the hill a little bit, just to make for a safe experience. Now, the upside is it's a very short period of time that you're going to be on that steep slope, but it does exist there. And then over towards Marriottsville Road, you can see a few more red spots there. That whole slope side that parallels Henrington Road is on a very steep side slope. And some of that will be mitigated, but the end of it will probably wind up being a little bit steep as well. And then, you know, we approach Marriottsville Road and, you know, we happily leave the park and enjoy ourselves. To give you an idea of what this looks like out in the woods, Colin, if you go to the next slide, we've pulled a few pictures from some hand-built trail that's been built in Patapsco. These are from the folks on our advisory committee, the Friends of Patapsco Valley State Park. This gives you an idea of kind of the corridor and the basis for where the trail bed is. This trail, as you're looking at it right now, is about 2.5 feet wide. And we're talking about something that's going to be 3 to 3.5 feet wide, right? So you have to kind of picture that corridor full scale, like all the vegetation on the left and the right has all been pulled back, up high has all been pulled back, and now they're putting the trail inside there. And then the last picture that we have here, again, this is another, you know, this is an established trail that's been here for a little while, and you can see it's nice and wide open. As it rises up to the top of this little turn here, the side slope begins to mellow a little bit, and what that does is that gives you an opportunity to kind of step aside, you know, have a conversation, you know, meet other trail users, and have those conflicts be avoided. And then the last picture again just kind of gives you an idea of, you know, in a steeper slope, those corridors can close in a little bit. But again, where we've got tops of the grade reversals and those sorts of things, it does kind of widen out a little bit so that you can communicate with each other, you know, and have a good experience for all. You know, because that's the primary idea, is to make sure that everybody's happy in the woods. So next up, we've got some questions.
All right. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Eric. That was a pretty good overview of where we have come along our journey. If you guys, you know, have any questions, as a reminder, don't forget that you can comment or text or email or any of those options that I presented earlier in the meeting. So again, I think, you know, our goals are to make sure that this is a great 8 to 80 trail, that we're really maintaining all of the vision and the intent from that original plan, and that we're giving, the people who are taking the design from 30 on some great tools, some great feedback from the public, and some great considerations to carry forward as the design continues to develop. So we have a couple questions for you all that we thought we would just take your temperature on. So these are some of the things that we have been thinking about as we've been developing these drawings and working with some of our key stakeholders, working with the folks at the park and BMC. So we're going to use a little tool called Slido. So the way that you can access these few questions is there's a QR code on your screen, and you can take your smartphone and just turn on your camera, and your camera should pick up that smart code like you're scanning something at the grocery store. And then typically there's like a little pop-up window or a drop-down, and you can touch that on your screen and you should see this question. The other way to get into Slido is to, on your computer or your smartphone or your tablet, go to slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. And the code to get in for these questions is hashtag or pound, whichever is your preference of that symbol or number sign, followed by 094964. So I'll give everybody just a couple seconds to either scan that QR code or jump into Slido. And our first question here is, where do you typically park when using this part of Patapsco Valley State Park? So it's possible that you're not using it and you can select other. And in a second, we'll give you the opportunity to actually type in what other means. Maybe you already use this and jump around in the couple trails that are already there. So maybe you're parking at Freedom Park. Or maybe you're parking at Gorsuch Switch Road, which is a fantastic little spot to jump into. And maybe you're selecting none because you walk or bike to the trail, or other might be what you want to select. So I'll just give it a couple seconds here. I see 3 people have answered. I know there's more of you watching, so grab your QR code or go to slido.com. and type in 094964. So maybe as everybody is, there we go, there's some more. Maybe as everyone's getting comfortable, they'll continue to look at this. So you can see that these little bars are jumping up on the screen. So it looks like some people are picking other, and we're going to give you an opportunity to type that in, what that other means. Looks like some of you are parking on Marysville Road. That's where we parked. And maybe just 1 or maybe 2 people park at Freedom Park. All right. So let's cruise through this, Colin, and see what the other means. So for those of you, we're just kind of curious, if you selected other, let us know what other means. So do you not use the trail at all? But of course you're looking forward to it. Or maybe you park somewhere else. Or maybe you're an equestrian rider, and so you're kind of starting at that place within the park already. And there you are. All right. And if you park somewhere that you don't want to tell us about, that's okay too. I'm not going to tell your secrets, but that's also okay. All right. So I think we can jump right into the next one. All right, so again, QR code is still up on the screen here if you want to scan it, or go to slido.com. So our second question here is, what would you use this new section of the Greenway for most? So are you a person who hikes? Are you a person who bikes and loves the soft surface trail? Or maybe you're going to bike along the Sykesville section. Are you a runner and you're going to get in those miles because we've got about 7.4 for you, or double if you go out and back? Are you riding horseback now and you'll do that in the future? We want to know. Are you somebody who uses Patapsco Valley State Park for hunting, and that's how you're going to be out here with us? Maybe you want this for water access. Maybe this is an amazing opportunity to get down to the water, which it is, and there's some beautiful views. Or maybe there's something else that you want to do out there. So I'll give everybody a few minutes. It looks like we've got some hiking and biking selected. Looks like we have our equestrian riders on the phone with us, or watching our YouTube. Thanks for calling in and watching. And looks like we got some hunters too. All right, so no others on this one unless someone buzzes in quickly with other. Right, okay, Colin, I think we can keep on cruising. Don't think we have any others, so we'll keep on rolling through. So the other one is just kind of a curiosity for us because we have, 7+ miles of trail. And it's just interesting for us to know how you plan to do your trip. So when we say out and back, that means you're going to start at one point, go out the trail, and then come back to where you started. If you're doing point to point, maybe you're meeting a friend and you drop one car on one end of the trail and drop another car on the other, and you guys jump in one car, start in one place, do your journey, and end at the other car. I got to tell you, that's what we did a couple of days while we were out there romping around in the forest. Or maybe you want to do a loop, and a loop might be because there's a trail out there already and you can make a loop. It might be because you can use this new Henryton Road Bridge abutment and you can loop down to the other existing trails. Or it might be that you loop around by being on your bicycle or walking and jumping on the road and creating a loop. So I know a lot of folks who use our trails love loops, but this stretch is, a pretty long stretch. So we're just kind of curious how you all are going to use it. All right. So it looks like we've got a little bit of point to point, and I can't remember what the second one was on the screen. Oh, thank you. Okay. So it's a tie. Out and backs, point to points, and loops. All right. Fantastic. All right, so that was just a fun little interactive poll. We wanted to take your temperature on a few things. And real quick, we just wanted to talk about our next steps. We've mentioned it a bit as we've gone through. And I wanted to, as we're getting into next steps, just see if there were any comments. BMC team, do we have any comments that came in that we should address? I don't see any comments in my chat box. Thank you, Charlene. All right, so our next steps is to complete our survey and geotechnical investigations, which becomes our technical base for our drawings. So we're working on that now. We should be wrapping up in October, so next month, and then diving into that 30% design. So it's really taking those lines that you've seen on maps tonight, getting into more of those technical drawings, looking at grading, understanding where things can fit, really looking at the width of trail and things that Eric has been talking about tonight, and where our trail will be adjacent to the land uses through Sykesville, looking at, perhaps where we may be removing some existing sidewalk because we're going to pull our trail off the road a little bit and make that a little bit more pleasant for users. So that's all of those things are going into making that line that you see on a map into more of a reality and something that we can build off of. So before I run into our last bit of how to comment going forward, I was going to let Keith close out and maybe mention anything that he wanted to close this out, or maybe talk about any kind of frequently asked questions that we've had previously.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. It looks like we did get a question that came in on the chat box. By what month and year do you expect the trail to be open? And what provisions have been made to maintain this additional trail? I believe I answered this on public input, but I'll go through it one more time. Right now, we don't have any anticipated time when the trail would be completed. As I said, we're only funded up to 30% at this point. And in order to construct the trail, either end of it, it's going to require somebody else stepping up and providing funding for final design and for the actual construction of the trails. And that could be either the county, it could be the town of Sykesville, it could be DNR, it could be any number of entities that step up, and there's different funding mechanisms that are available to help provide assistance. But at this time, none of those have been identified. And as far as the maintenance, we have been in contact with DNR from the inception of this project. They're aware of the trail. They know that it's going to require additional staff probably to maintain the trail, to pick up trash, to police the trail, to provide emergency services if necessary. So we're looking at different ways to help identify funding for DNR to provide additional staff. So they are aware of it, and that's how this project will be maintained. And it looks like we have another comment. When could this possibly be done? Basically, I just answered that question. So we don't know right now when it'll be done. We'd like to see in the next year or two somebody step up and provide funding. There's a good possibility that this could be broken up into two different sections and funded separately. The eastern section and the western section. The western section being the downtown might be actually a little bit easier to get funding for. So there's a possibility that could get constructed first. But at this time, again, we really don't know when it will be funded and when it will be constructed. We'll give it a couple more minutes here, maybe, to see if there's any other questions come in.
And I'm thinking, Keith, we should have asked for, how are you going to use the trail to walk my dog on leash?
There you go. While we're waiting to see if there was any other questions coming in, just wanted to thank you guys from RK&K. You did a wonderful job with the presentation. Right now, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. I'll give it a couple more seconds. But if there's no more questions, I'd like to just thank everybody now for joining us today. I'd also like to thank the steering committee and advisory committee for their input and their support. And just a reminder that the comment period for this project is going to be open until October 29th. So feel free to add your comments into public input or any of the methods that Melissa outlined here: email, call us, text us, I don't know, smoke signals, whatever works for you guys. We'll be happy to try to provide some responses. I don't see any other questions, so if there's nothing else, I guess it's time to wrap this up, and I thank you all for coming, and good night.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Good night.
Thank you.